We all have where were you when stories. Memories, moments. We know exactly where we were when something happened, when we heard certain news, when particular events happened in our lives or in the world. Some of these are terrible events, horrific. I know where I was when our neighbors ran over to tell us to turn on our TVs the morning of September 11th, 2001. Others are positive, great events. I remember the exact way I was sitting when I watched Sidney Crosby score the golden goal, securing the gold medal in men's hockey for Canada over the United States in 2010. Sorry. I recently had another one of these moments. It was recent, but I just know that down the road I'll look back and remember exactly where I was when I became a Minnesota Timberwolves fan. It was a Sunday night, May 19th, 2024. Game 7. Do you need me to set the scene, or were you all watching like I was? I actually missed most of the game. I'm historically not a big basketball fan. I turned it on at halftime. Let me repeat that so it sinks in. For those of you who remember how that game went, I turned it on at halftime. Halftime when the Timberwolves were down by 20 points. Now, certainly I'm not going to stand here and suggest that I'm the reason they won. But I do think it's pretty obvious that they were losing. Then I arrived. All I'm saying is that if you're going to buy a jersey, sure, you could get Edwards or Reed, but you may consider getting Goldberg back there instead. Anyway, the determination and the strength it takes to come back from such a deficit is to be lauded, to be celebrated. And there is much we can learn from this team that hopefully won last night. Did we win last night? Okay, well, there goes most of the sermon. But I'd like to focus on something else today. I'd like to focus on something else today, not the team itself, but something relevant, which is the concept of the bandwagon. I bring this Dvar Torah today to you humbly, recognizing that I'm a brand new fan of a successful sports team. Now, I'm sure many of us are familiar with the concept or the term bandwagon, but the dictionary defines a bandwagoner as a fan who has shown no past loyalty to a team and supports them all because they're actively succeeding or trendy. People who historically have not been fans of a team, who become fans when that team experiences success. Those people are considered to be on the bandwagon. Many of us fans of mediocre sports teams feel like you have to earn your stripes as a fan. That is, you have to experience the suffering of losing if you want to be part of the celebration of winning. Now, personally, the one professional sports team I follow is the Vancouver Canucks. So I don't actually know what winning feels like, but I anticipate that one day it will be great and the suffering will be worth it. Anyway, as a new fan of the Timberwolves, I didn't want to seem as if I was only cheering for them while they were winning, and it got me thinking about this judgment that exists in the sports fan world. At first glance, our Parsha this week seems to touch on this very concept, indirectly, mind you, so let's do this together. Once again, as we've read dozens of times already, we hear the instruction, do not wrong your neighbor. Lo tonu ish et amito. Now, this is the most oft repeated commandment, as we know, as I've said recently from this bima. But this particular formation, this phrase, lo tonu, is expanded on in the Talmud, in Bava Metzia. The rabbis take it up and they discuss and define the concept of ona'at devarim, Ona'ah being the noun when tonu is the verb. Harming someone through speech, ona'at devarim. The Talmud says that just as there is ona'ah in business, meaning we can harm or cause harm monetarily, so too can you cause harm through words. And it gives the specific example of window shopping. Spending time in a store, but not making a purchase. One may not ask a salesperson, how much does this cost, if they have no intention of buying it. Lo yomar lo bechama chefetz zeh, v'hu eino rotzeh likach. He could make the salesperson think you're really going to buy this thing. It'll raise his hopes. Maybe he'll think, now I can send my kids to college. But then, you don't actually spend any money in the store. It seems that the rabbis understand this concept and this verse from our Torah reading to say, do not misrepresent yourself. Do not use your words to pretend to be someone you're not. That includes, as a customer in a store, and we could imagine or worry, a fan of a sports team you don't actually like. As I stand here right now, Timberwolves jersey being delivered this week, I can imagine how it could seem like I'm representing myself as a lifelong fan. Ona'at devarim, harming others through speech or through our representation, is described later on by the rabbis as one of the worst sins, one of 3 unredeemable sins or transgressions. And I think we can understand how using words to lie or to harm can be so awful. But we're left to wonder, does cheering for a winning team fall into that category of misrepresentation? Luckily, the answer is no. Because there's an important second part to this teaching. It's not only about what we say and the decisions we make, but why and how we do so. And this comes in a Torah verse we read a couple weeks ago, in the instruction to not follow the crowds to do evil. Lo tihyeh acharei rabim l'ra'ot. Do not be convinced by the multitudes, by your friends, by the louder voices, to go do harm. Do not blindly join the masses and be party to destruction or damage. It's not only what we say, but it's the intention with which we do it. The commentator Ibn Ezra from 12th century Spain clarifies this instruction with an example. If you see many people testifying concerning something you know nothing of, do not say to yourself, they must be right, and support their testimony. Because we don't know and we should not assume. With this additional perspective, we see that the issue is not only how we represent ourselves, it's not only the decision we make, what color we wear on game day, but how we arrived at that decision. We cannot simply follow the loudest voices or just go with the group, but we must educate ourselves, ask questions, learn, become knowledgeable so that we may have an opinion that is relevant and well-informed. And herein lies the crux of the matter, the main point, the most important teaching today. The Torah is perfectly fine with me becoming a Timberwolves fan this week. The teaching from this week's Torah portion is, do not make yourself appear one way when you are really something else. Do not agree with the masses when you're not actually informed. But if you do the work, if you do the learning, if you put the time in, then welcome. It's a lesson in integrity. It's a lesson in integrity because it's also reminding us that it is okay to change. Not only in sports, but also in sports. It's okay to change our allegiance, to take on additional identities or teams, as long as we do so thoughtfully, intentionally, and that we take time to learn whatever history we need to learn, important history, like that the team joined through expansion in 1989, and made it to the conference finals last in 2003-2004, a season in which they won 58 games and ultimately lost to the Lakers. The concept of the bandwagon often feels like gatekeeping. Like fans saying, oh, you're not a real fan. Or you can't cheer for this team now if you didn't before. While this is of course unreasonable, I think it's based in a very real fear of being misunderstood. It's easy to put up walls and say, you won't understand this. Or you don't really know what this means to us. But it's important that we resist that urge. The Torah reminds us today that we don't know how someone ended up in our camp. We only know they're here now. As we read Parshat Behar this week, let us not judge people for changing their minds. Rather, let us applaud their dedication to learning and growth. Let us remember that it is not dishonest to experience a new perspective. Let us crush the Mavericks. And let us continue to heed the Torah's call to this kind of integrity. Shabbat Shalom.